Welcome to the Restricted Handling Podcast. Let's dig in. Here's what's been going on in Russia in the last 24 hours. Let's start in the Middle East, because the war involving the United States, Israel, and Iran is now colliding directly with the war in Ukraine, in a way that would have sounded pretty strange a few years ago. Over the weekend, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that Ukraine is sending drone defense specialists and interceptor drones to help protect U.S. military bases in Jordan. According to Zelensky, Washington asked for help, and Kyiv moved quickly. Ukrainian experts reportedly departed almost immediately after the request came in. Now pause for a second and appreciate how wild that is strategically. Ukraine is in the fifth year of fighting a full-scale war with Russia. Yet here we are, with Ukrainian operators, people who have spent years staring at the sky listening for Iranian-designed Shahed drones, now heading to the Middle East to help defend American installations from those exact same drones. And if you're wondering why Ukraine specifically, the answer is simple. Nobody on Earth has more real-world experience fighting these things. Russia started using Iranian Shahed drones early in the invasion, and since then, Ukraine has been under near constant attack from them. Ukrainian forces had to figure out how to stop them fast, because the economics were brutal. A Shahed drone costs somewhere around $50,000 to produce. A Patriot interceptor missile, one of the systems normally used to shoot them down, costs over $3 million. That's like using a Ferrari to chase down a guy on a bicycle. It works, but you're going broke doing it. So Ukraine adapted. They started mixing electronic jamming, heavy machine guns, F-16 rockets, and their own domestically produced interceptor drones. Over time, they built a layered defense that dramatically improved interception rates. By February this year, Ukrainian air defenses were reportedly destroying roughly 87% of incoming drones. Now, those lessons are suddenly relevant to the Middle East because Iran is launching large numbers of those same drones toward U.S. partners in the Gulf and toward Israel. Several regional countries, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, have already contacted Kyiv asking about training and technology. So Ukraine is leaning into this moment hard. Zelensky has been openly talking about trading expertise and interceptor drones for things Ukraine desperately needs, especially advanced air defense missiles like the PAC-3 Patriot interceptors that help stop ballistic missiles. Ukraine has received only a few hundred of those during the entire war. Meanwhile, some Middle Eastern countries reportedly fired hundreds of Patriots in just the opening days of the Iran conflict. It's geopolitical bartering in real time. Ukraine saying, hey, we'll help you deal with Iranian drones, but maybe slide us some missile interceptors while we're at it. At the same time, Kyiv is expanding defense partnerships in Europe. Over the weekend, Zelensky met with Dutch Prime Minister Rob Jetten in Kyiv to discuss expanding joint weapons production. Ukraine has been opening drone factories and trying to bring in European investment to scale up its defense industrial base. That's becoming increasingly important as the war drags on and global weapons demand spikes. And make no mistake, the Middle East war complicates Ukraine's strategic environment. On one hand, it gives Ukraine leverage because everyone suddenly cares about anti-drone technology. On the other hand, it risks pulling Western political attention and military supplies away from Kyiv. Now layer in Russia. Because Moscow is very much in the background of the Iran conflict. Reports surfaced this week that U.S. intelligence believes Russia may have shared information with Iran about American military assets in the region, things like ship locations or aircraft positions. The White House publicly downplayed the significance of that, saying it hasn't affected military operations. But the possibility itself highlights how intertwined the Russia-Iran partnership has become. Remember how we got here. Iran supplied Russia with the Shahed drones used against Ukraine. Russia helped Iran economically and diplomatically, bringing Tehran into organizations like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Last year, the two countries signed a comprehensive strategic partnership agreement covering military cooperation, trade, and technology. And this week, after the death of Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei in U.S. and Israeli strikes, Russian President Vladimir Putin sent a congratulatory message to the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, reaffirming Russia's support. So while Moscow isn't directly jumping into the war against the United States, it's definitely standing close enough to feel the heat. And if we're being honest, the Kremlin probably isn't crying about the situation. A prolonged conflict in the Middle East could drive up oil prices, which would help Russia's war economy. For a government that's been under heavy sanctions for years, that's not nothing. Meanwhile, back in Ukraine itself, the battlefield picture hasn't dramatically shifted, but the intensity hasn't gone down either. Russian forces conducted offensive operations across multiple sectors over the weekend. Kharkiv in the north, Kupiansk along the Oskil River, the Sloviansk-Lyman axis in Donetsk, and southern areas near Huliaipol and Zaporizhzhia. According to Ukrainian reports and battlefield monitoring, those attacks didn't produce confirmed territorial gains. In the south, Russia moved elements of its 40th Naval Infantry Brigade into the Huliaipol sector. Ukrainian forces reported repelling a mechanized assault involving a tank, an armored vehicle, and several ATVs. Most Russian assaults these days are actually small infantry infiltration groups rather than large armored pushes, something that reflects both heavy losses and the increasingly drone-dominated battlefield. And speaking of drones, the scale of the drone war is staggering. Russian authorities said their air defenses intercepted more than 200 Ukrainian drones across central and southern Russia in a 9-hour window recently. Another overnight report claimed more than 160 Ukrainian drones were destroyed across multiple Russian regions, including Bryansk, Crimea, and Krasnodar. Ukraine, meanwhile, says Russia continues launching massive drone barrages of its own. One recent overnight attack involved more than 100 drones along with ballistic missiles targeting Ukrainian infrastructure. Both sides are basically running a non-stop aerial chess match with unmanned systems. Thousands of drones, decoys, and interceptors flying every week. If you're trying to understand the future of warfare, you're watching it right now. And every once in a while, the ripple effects hit NATO territory. Earlier this week, Poland scrambled fighter jets after Russian long-range aviation launched missile strikes into Ukraine near NATO airspace. Polish authorities said the aircraft deployment was purely precautionary, no violation of Polish airspace, but it's a reminder of how close the war sits to the alliance's borders. One more interesting piece from the sanctions front. Swedish authorities recently boarded a cargo ship called Kaffa near the port of Trelleborg. Investigators believe it may be part of Russia's so-called shadow fleet, a network of aging cargo vessels used to bypass sanctions and move goods like oil or even stolen Ukrainian grain. Swedish officials detained a crew member and launched an investigation after finding what they described as extensive deficiencies on the vessel. It's another small but important piece of the economic pressure campaign against Moscow. Thanks for listening and being part of the RH community. Please take a moment to leave a 5-star review. If you want to see some changes, email us at info@restrictedhandling.com. We also publish a daily written intel brief on Substack, where you'll find even deeper coverage of Russia and China, along with insights on Iran, the Middle East, and the DPRK.